achieve a hard-won win, like winning a championship match, and at least 3 chemicals hit the brain. Dopamine, endorphins, and oxytocin combined can induce a state of off-the-scale euphoria. You probably know by now, because so many people talk about it, that dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and it plays a crucial part in the brain's motivation and reward system. Dopamine can be in itself a form of reward, and we naturally orientate ourselves towards the things that will lead us through the experience of a dopamine high. But it doesn't come for free. To get a big hit, we have to first conquer a substantial challenge. Or do we? There is in fact an alternative way to obtain a dopamine high, a way that doesn't involve our own work, and that's to share in the highs of others who we identify with. It's a quite wonderful feature of the human brain's reward system that we can identify with and share in effectively the experiences of others that in evolutionary terms could be described as members of our own tribe. Because dopamine plays a role in motivation, this mechanism is critical to ensure shared community effort and cooperation. We champion the wins of members of our tribe, and their success furnishes a similar dopamine high for the tribe as a whole. Indeed, this is a part of why we cherish our champions so much. They're ours. They make us feel good. But it isn't all dopamine for free. Or at least it is, but it isn't always free from consequences. Like many features of the human design, this feature, the shared dopamine response, is in some respects maladapted for modern day life. You'll already know, for example, that thanks to the disjunction that exists between the exercise we're evolved to need and our desk-bound modern-day lifestyles, we now have a dwindling level of core strength. Our articulated spinal joints are prone to problems because of this. And then there's the appendix, an organ that seems not to serve any major function at all, apart from to every now and again hospitalise us with a life-threatening condition. Well, so too in today's world, the very mechanism by which we get our social dopamine hit can also have unintended consequences. Through technology, we now experience artificial, second-order social experiences, and though the hit these experiences deliver is comparatively speaking weak, it's still nevertheless very real. Yes, we're talking about social media. This isn't how the brain's dopamine cycle should be working day to day. Now, while we can't expect on a daily basis to experience a massive dopamine high, a natural and healthy dopamine cycle, the kind more people would have had before social media, would nevertheless have had a certain rhythm and amplitude. It should have a certain weightiness that motivates us to surely take action on projects of our own design. But the small dopamine hits delivered by social media are at the other end of the scale. They're tiny. The very convenience and ready availability of these things, our smartphones, leads to continual disruption and sideways deflection away from a more substantial cycle that meets our personal goals. With our devices on hand, it's like we can distractedly pick a chocolate whenever we want out of an infinite tray of chocolates. But the distractions our digital devices provide are external. They're a fairly useless mini-hit that exploits that shared dopamine response mechanism. The hits they provide don't help to deliver our plans or enhance our neighbourhood. They knock us off course, and they can lead us to get marooned in a low amplitude, low arousal dopamine state. But there's a second neurological mechanism we should be aware of here, and that's the capacity we humans have for forming habits, a capacity that's simply unparalleled in the animal kingdom. And like with social dopamine mechanisms, this capacity evolved for good reasons. It evolved so that we don't have to think about all the tasks that we do. Like when we change gear in a car, habits become reflexive, which means we initiate them before we've even thought about it, usually based on a simple stimulus. This is because our consciousness, that we use for thinking and rationalizing, is a precious resource, and the more we can offload routine actions to habit, the better we can allocate consciousness to doing more important analytical stuff. But there's a downside to this mechanism, and that's that we have a tendency to start an action without thinking based on a simple stimulus. Smartphones are like a new artificial nerve pathway has been grafted onto us, so we can get a cascade of stimulus that doesn't really correspond to anything that we'd see in real life. It enables a continual, disconnected cavalcade of stimulus. And when you think about it, the fact that we initiate habit without thought means that habits don't have a delete button. Through the mechanism of habit, we don't notice that the dopamine hits we get from browsing social media, which already started off as small, get yet smaller. Without conscious thought, we enter a vicious circle, repeatedly seeking to replace the lessening dopamine hit. This leads to the habit growing stronger, ossifying and transforming into a compulsion. Houston, we have a problem. These things have enabled a parasitic process to hitch a ride on brain mechanisms that originally had a healthy purpose. So now you can see two features of the mind that evolved for far more important reasons have now been hooked into by smartphones. Ironically, the very same mechanism as should be driving us to participate in real-world community and celebrating the wins of our neighbours is now leading us away from that real-life community and away from the achievement of meaningful goals. And habit, which should be saving us effort with useful routine tasks, is instead leading us to repeat useless ones ad nauseam. And yet worse, we don't immediately feel the cost because the hits aren't bad in themselves. Unlike with booze or gambling or drugs, we aren't obviously killing our brain cells or incapacitating ourselves or throwing money away. But let's be clear, indirectly we're doing all of those things. So here's the charge sheet. Social media and the interruptions that we get from these devices disrupt go-forward momentum. They exact a cost. But we don't feel the cost. It's what accountants call opportunity cost. And that's because we don't see the other more productive things that we could have been doing instead. And then through the notifications we receive, it's like we have the perfect mechanism for training ourselves to work in a distracted fashion. It takes time to work with focus and purpose. We're quite literally training ourselves to suffer an adult form of ADHD. And lastly, we're conditioning ourselves to live in a low arousal state where we no longer have the habit of digging into our projects and objectives. Getting started on anything meaningful becomes harder than is healthy. So be honest. Ask yourself, do you routinely find it difficult to get started and motivated to do tasks that require you to defer reward for even just a short period of time? Because if so, you have a problem. But if then you can get started, but after entering a focus and flow state, within minutes you find that you're getting distracted by one of these, if that happens routinely, you have a problem. I know this because I've been there. And I've also, after a struggle, beaten the problem. So I also know that it can be done. If this applies to you, then the good news is you've already made a start. Understanding the brain mechanisms at play is a first step to beating the overuse of digital devices. We can interrupt the cycle, and here's how. Firstly, understand the habit mechanism through bypassing conscious thought puts us in something of a tunnel. And when we're in that tunnel, we're blind to the world. So we fail to see what's before us and that what we're so interested in is in reality almost invariably inconsequential and paper thin. If we can just be mindful of this, then it's easy to see how small and petty our behaviour is. And of course we can put this thing back in our pocket. But then what about the problem of habits not having a delete button? Enter the Simple Focus Digital Detox card deck, your ultimate companion for a 30-day journey towards digital balance and mental clarity. The human brain has immense neuroplasticity, and research has shown that approximately 30 days are required for the brain to downgrade highly activated habits. While they can't ever be fully erased, they can be crowded out through the introduction of superior practices that tap into a healthier and more effective reward cycle. With 42 cards brimming with scientifically proven neurologically positive activities, each day becomes a step closer to rejuvenation. It works like this. This first vibrant yellow card sets the tone and acts as your progress marker. Each day, draw a card from the back of the pack and place it on the top and dive into the day's recommendation. The first card links to the guide for optimizing your experience and informing your friends and loved ones about the program that you're going to be undertaking. Then the first priority is to lay firm foundations by concentrating on activities proven to enhance sleep quality. Follow a curated series of activities backed by neurological science and designed to refine your daily routines and diminish cravings for fleeting dopamine rushes. We understand that preferences vary, so some days offer a choice of activities so that you can tailor the program to your liking. Filled with uplifting tasks, this program promises a subtle yet profound impact on your well-being. So embrace the journey and witness the transformative power of Simple Focus Digital Detox.